afraid. I know you are good.
People passing over the bridge see a young woman climbing over the railing and jumping down. She wakes up in the hospital but can't remember anything about herself. A nurse notices terrible scars on her back. Sometime later, in the house of a married couple, Nancy and Abel Johnson, they get a call and rush to the hospital. They recognize the stranger as their daughter, who disappeared 7 years ago, except that before her disappearance, the girl was blind. They have to take her to a house near which there is a large gathering of people. They have to lead her into the house, covering her head with a blanket. Later, the FBI investigator who handled the case of her disappearance arrives, but the girl assures him that she knew very well where she had been all these years, and she tried to go back to where the other prisoners remained, but she could not find her way. At night, she tries to go online to find Homer, but her computer is offline. Her mother offers to go for a walk and asks how her vision came back to her, but Prairie can't explain it. 2 teenagers see her and take a picture. In the morning, one of them, Steve, flies in from his father. The teacher complained about him again. Prairie records on videotape an appeal to Homer and promises to come get him. She again asks for the internet connection, but her mother, following doctor's orders, refuses. So the girl climbs out the window and goes to the abandoned house, where Steve's company gathers. Prairie asks the boys to share the internet, but Steve sets his dog on her. The dog knocks the girl to the floor and bites her. The company is shocked, but they can't argue with the leader. Then Prairie bites the dog herself and whispers something to her. The shocked teenagers see the animal begin to lick the blood from Prairie's wounds, and she silently gets up and takes her camera and leaves. The next day, Steve beats up a boy from his school and then comes to Prairie's house. He brings her a router and offers her a plea bargain. His father intends to send him to a school for troubled teens. Prairie agrees to help, but he in turn must find 5 strong men and bring them to the abandoned house. The pair go to the store, where Steve helps Prairie pick out some modern clothes. Looking into the fitting room, he sees the horrible scars on her back, and he advises her to get a grown-up haircut. The transformed Prairie arrives at the school and introduces herself as Steve's stepmother. The teacher, Elizabeth Broderick, whom everyone just calls Betty, complains that Steve has become so intolerable that she insists on expelling him, and Prairie suddenly reminds her of her purpose. Teaching excellent students is easy, but that's not the vocation of an educator, is it? And when asked about her name, he calls it. She's OA. At home, Prairie gets online and finds a report about the miraculous resurrection of soccer player Homer Roberts. She cries at the monitor, remembering the guy. At this time, Steve calls. He's stunned. Betty seems to have been switched. The girl reminds him that tonight she is expecting 5 people in an abandoned house. Moreover, they must leave the doors of their houses open. In the meantime, Betty meets Steve's father and real mother and accidentally reveals their son's secret. Their family goes to the Johnson house. Prairie's mother stands up for her daughter, and she records a plea for help and posts it online. The parents take the measures recommended by the doctors. They take away their daughter's gadgets and take the doors off their hinges so that she's always supervised. In the evening, Betty goes online and sees Prairie's appeal. It is also viewed by the teens in Steve's company, Buck Vu, Jesse, and Alfonso. At this time, Prairie is sitting alone on the floor of an abandoned house in front of 5 burning candles, and when she decides no one is coming and starts to extinguish the candles, Steve and his buddies enter. But there are only 4 of them. Prairie gets upset, and at that moment footsteps are heard on the stairs. It's Betty coming in. Prairie informs them that she will tell her story first, and then they will understand everything. She was born in Russia in 1987 to a very wealthy family. They lived with her father, not far from Moscow. Her mother died in childbirth, and her father raised the girl by himself. Only very rich people lived in their village, and Nina, that was the girl's real name, was friends with their children. Since childhood, Nina was plagued by nightmares, after which the girl's nose would bleed. Most often she dreamt that she was trapped in an aquarium, she could not get out, and she could not breathe. And one day her father brought her to the winter lake and told her to get into the ice hole. The girl had to become colder than the cold and defeat it. Suddenly the cold was gone, and she wasn't bleeding anymore. She began to walk to school. She was picked up by a special school bus. But one day she suddenly felt very anxious and wanted to get off. At that moment, the car lost control and flew off the bridge. The children were trapped in the car, which was sinking to the bottom. Only Nina guessed to get out through the windshield. It was a warning to their parents that their options were not limitless. The tycoon's children died, and so did Nina. She didn't realize where she was or why the darkness was so blinding. And the next moment, she was pulled out of the water by the hands of an amazing woman. She spoke to the girl. Nina could stay, but she could go back. But there she would suffer. Nina wanted to go back, and then the star woman took her eyes so that the girl would not see what awaited her. Her father found Nina on the shore, but she saw nothing. To prevent a repeat of the attempt, her father took Nina to America and put her in a school for the blind, where her aunt visited her on weekends. But every Sunday her father called her, and she played the violin for him. One day she was called to the principal's office and informed of her father's death. Her aunt took her to her house, and the girl ended up in a house with easygoing women. From time to time there were babies in the house, and Nina took care of them, although she herself was small. One day a Johnson couple came to this house. They wanted to take the newborn, but it happened that Nancy saw Nina. She was so moved by the girl's fate that they decided to take her into their home. At first everything was fine, but soon the foster parents found out that the girl was walking around at night. They showed her to a doctor and he prescribed medication, scaring the parents of the possibility of a mental disorder. So Nancy began treatment. Prairie was kept on medication for 13 years, but the dreams never stopped. One day she saw herself in the head of the Statue of Liberty, where she was met by her father with 21 burning candles in his hands. Nina realized where they were to meet and ran away. She got to the statue and sat at its foot all the day, but her father never came. The girl went to the train station and decided that her father would find her through the music, so she pulled out her violin. So another man found her. It was morning, and the company went home without listening to Prairie's story. Her parents noticed the girl's absence and tried to restrict her movements, but the girl managed to persuade them to give permission for an hour's walk every night. Prairie's overnight listeners decided to check out her story and began scouring the internet, looking for reports of an accident in Russia. But Alfonso, who had received an invitation to a free college education, decided not to get involved with the dubious enterprise. Book Vu tries to talk the guy into coming tonight, because Prairie chose them for a reason, and Alfonso, after thinking about it, agrees. Prairie continues the story. She was playing the violin when a man approached her. Dr. Hunter Aloysius Happ was fascinated by her playing and guessed that she had been playing so well since something happened to her. Happ took her out to lunch, and over the meal he told her that he was doing research on near-death experiences, the NDE, which he had become interested in when he worked as an anesthesiologist. He now works with 4 such people. He gives the girl an instrument to listen to the pounding of the human heart. Prairie listens to the heart sounds of other people and becomes so enthralled that he asks Happ to take her to his laboratory. They fly in his plane and arrive at a house in the mountains. Prairie tries to call her parents, but no one answers. That's when Happ offers to take her downstairs to the lab. He leads her into the room, sits her down in the bed, and closes the door behind him. Hearing the sound of the lock, the girl rushes in and realizes that she's in a glass cage. A stranger's voice sneers nearby. She probably thinks she's dreaming and will be found soon, so she can be sure no one will ever find her. Neither will they, her neighbors. He's Homer.